It's Friday night. You have the guys over, crack open a few Cokes and Pepsis. Because your parents moved their liquor stash, you order a pizza, Hawaiian of course, and you put on a game of football. No, football. Followed by your standard Friday night banana? We take a lot of things for granted. Bananas, football, pizza, Coke, Pepsi, and why wouldn't we? They're sort of just things that are there. The only time anyone ever really thinks about pizza is when they're trying to figure out how many people would eat it if they got some. Spoilers! Everyone will eat it and no one will give you any money. That's just the rules. But as common as these Friday night staples are, how they became common is anything but. In 1899, the United Fruit Co. was founded, and in a mere 10 years, they would make bananas a thing. Their secret? They controlled everything. From the railroads to the ports to the ships to the plantations, they owned it. Fast forward to 1950s Guatemala, also known then as Banana Land, and things start getting appealing. That was terrible. I'm sorry. Jacobo Arbenz was elected president of Guatemala in 1951, and by 52 he was planning on buying up all the unused land in Guatemala and distributing it evenly amongst the citizens, as well as nationalizing the ports and railways. This being a big no-no for the company that stood to lose a lot of banana profit from this move, the United Fruit Co. took action. Luckily, two of their former lawyers were now the Secretary of State and the head of CIA, and were able to convince President Eisenhower that Arbenz was in fact a communist, which was very uncool in the 50s. With Guatemala so close to America, the president decided to do something about it. They set up a radio station in Miami, but told everyone that they were broadcasting from the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, hired a gang of mercenaries to hang out around the Guatemalan borders, and then announced on the radio that there was an army invading Guatemala. They sent a few aircraft to fly over the capital to scare people, and then announced on the radio that the army was moving towards the city. And it worked. Arbenz resigned and his family was torn apart through their painful exile process. His daughter committed suicide and he descended deeply into alcoholism. The CIA installed Castillo Armas in his stead, who gave back United Fruit Co. their land to keep on making cheap bananas. Operation Success was aptly named. But Arbenz's family weren't the only victims. The coup d'etat sparked a 26-year-long civil war in which over 200,000 people lost their lives. But now we have fun, cheap yellow fruit, which annoying people at parties will tell you to peel from the bottom. Worth it. During this period, Pepsi would become one of the greatest military powers in history. In 1959, President Eisenhower wanted to spread the American lifestyle to the USSR, basically trying to get the Soviet citizens to realize the benefits of capitalism over communism. They did so by organizing the American National Exhibition in Moscow, at which then Vice President Nixon and Soviet leader Khrushchev got in a heated argument, and the Vice President of PepsiCo was quick to offer Khrushchev a glass of their sugary bubbly water. The image went 50s viral, but it wouldn't be until the 70s that the Soviet people craved Pepsi. By 1972, the Soviets were very close to a deal that would bring Pepsi to the USSR. However, there was still the question of how they would pay, as the ruble wasn't accepted anywhere internationally. So they ended up paying in the most universal currency ever: vodka. The deal was a landmark, as it was the first Western product to be sold in the USSR. By '89, the Soviets wanted way more Pepsi, and vodka wouldn't be enough to cover the cost. So instead, they sold them a fleet. The USSR traded 17 submarines, a frigate, a cruiser, and a destroyer for $3 billion worth of Pepsi. For the few days before Pepsi sold the fleet for parts, they were the 6th biggest military power in the world. The head of PepsiCo later joked with the United States National Security Advisor, saying that we're disarming the Soviet Union faster than you are. While Pepsi may have done what no one else could by conquering Russia, Coca-Cola would conquer the rest of the world. As the Americans entered the Second World War in 1941, Robert Woodruff declared that every man in a uniform would get a bottle of Coke for 5 cents, regardless of location or cost to the company. A rather empty promise at the time, as Coke hadn't really made it overseas. That is until 1943, when then General Eisenhower, a longtime friend of Woodruff, fulfilled the promise by having 3 million bottles shipped to North Africa. He then had makeshift factories set up all over Europe and the Pacific, which were operated by affectionately nicknamed Coca-Cola colonels. Well, if that happened today, that would probably read as disgusting, horrific corporate branding of war, but at the time, the soldiers were reportedly very moved, as Coke seemed to remind them of home and what they were fighting for. When the war ended, the factories stayed open, having benefited from the locals loving the drink as well, and by 1960, Coca-Cola's worldwide reach had nearly doubled. While American sugary bubbly drink was spread worldwide, Italian flatbread would conquer America. Pizza, while basically being impossible to track the origins of, was very prominent in Italian cuisine. And during the Second World War, American troops, among others that were stationed there, loved it. While one of the first pizzerias was opened stateside in 1905, it wouldn't be until after the Second World War, when American GIs returned home, that a widespread appetite was developed for it. That, mixed with its communal nature and low cost to make and thus appeal to families, by the 1960s, pizza had become a cultural institution. Schools had pizza parties, hippies satisfied their munchies with pizza, offices ordered pizza for lunch meetings, and somehow, something born out of such horror became deeply associated with an animatronic guitar-playing mouse. And it wouldn't be Friday without sports, in this case football or soccer. The sport that we just can't seem to figure out on the cool side of the Atlantic is meant to inspire and break down barriers across the world. Or at least that's what FIFA says about football. Their headquarters, however, say something else entirely. Well, in many cases, football does unite people. It hasn't always. The football war, which sounds like a fun tournament, was everything but. In the early 20th century, many Salvadorans emigrated from their home country of El Salvador to their neighboring country, Honduras. It wasn't really out of choice, but more of a necessity. Honduras was 3 times bigger in landmass and had a smaller population than El Salvador, which led many Salvadorans to leave their densely packed homeland to take up lives in Honduras. Unfortunately, this pissed off the Hondurans, who were upset that the Salvadorans were taking their jobs and land. Sound familiar? Fast forward to 1969 during a World Cup qualifying match between El Salvador and Honduras held in the capital of Honduras, and we have ourselves a tinderbox. Following a late game victory by Honduras was heavy rioting that reportedly resulted in lighting the Honduran stadium on fire and the suicide of a heartbroken Salvadoran. The following 2 games fared no better. Honduran players were quoted saying that they were lucky that they lost the second and third games, because otherwise they wouldn't have made it out alive. After El Salvador won the final game, with both countries seemingly having done everything in their power to piss each other off, El Salvador invaded Honduras. The conflict was short-lived, and a ceasefire was called after only 100 hours. Yet, in that short period of time, 2,000 people lost their lives. So what does your Friday night cost? Does it cost someone else their freedom, or does it give you your freedom? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to learn more about anything that I talked about in this video, there's links in the description. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for new videos every Wednesday, or most Wednesdays. I was in Japan the last 2 weeks, so sorry. Thanks for watching.